Was a highwayman. Along the coach roads I did ride, with sword and pistol by my side. Many a young maid lost her baubles to my trade, and many a soldier shed his lifeblood on my blade. The bastards hung me in the spring of 25, but I am still alive.
I was a sailor, I was born upon the tide, and with the sea I did abide. I sailed a schooner around the Horn of Mexico. I went aloft to furl the mainsail in a blow. And when the yards broke off, they said that I got killed, but I am living still.
I was a dam builder, across the river deep and wide, where steel and water did collide. A place called Boulder on the wild Colorado. I slipped and fell into the wet concrete below. They buried me in that great tomb that knows no sign, but I am still around. Always be around and around and around and around and around and around.
I fly a starship across the universe divide, and when I reach the other side, I'll find a place to rest my spirit if I can. Perhaps I may become a highwayman again, or I may simply be a single drop of rain, but I will remain, and I'll be back again and again and again and again and again and again and again.
Cowboys ain't easy to love and they're harder to hold. They'd rather give you a song than diamonds of gold.
Long star bell buckles and old faded Levi's, and each night begins a new day. And if you don't understand him and he don't die young, you'll probably just ride away.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don't let them pick guitars and drive them old trucks. Let them be doctors and lawyers and such. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Stay home and they're always alone, even with someone they love.
Cowboys like smoky old pool rooms and clear mountain morning, little warm puppies and children and girls of the night.
And them that don't know him won't like him, and them that do sometimes won't know how to take it. He ain't wrong, he's just different, but his pride won't let him do things to make you think he's right.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don't let them pick guitars and drive them old trucks. Let them be doctors and lawyers and such. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. They'll never stay home and they're always alone, even with someone they love.
Well, a long time forgotten, her dreams have just fell by the way. And the good life he promised ain't what she's living today.
But she never complains of the bad times or the bad things he's done for her. She just talks about the good times they've had and all the good times to come.
She's a good-hearted woman in love with a good-time man. And she loves him in spite of his ways that she don't understand. And through teardrops and laughter, they're gonna pass through this world hand in hand. This good-hearted woman in love with a good-time man. He likes the nightlife, the bright lights, and his good time and friends. And when the party's all over, she'll welcome him back home again.
Through teardrops and laughter, they'll pass through this world hand in hand. A good-hearted woman in love with a good-timing man.
Good-hearted woman in love with a good-time man. And she loves him in spite of his ways that she don't understand. And through teardrops and laughter, they'll pass through this world hand in hand. This good-hearted woman in love with a good-time man.
Is everybody having a good time so far? Well, you might as well, because we done got your money. Got about half of it spent. I'm gonna do this song. This is a song I wrote about myself, but looking at some of y'all, I might have wrote it about you too. I was so ugly, the doctor slapped my mama when I was born. Then he took out his pocket knife and cut off my horn. He said, lady, if you ain't already picked out a name, go ahead on and call him Trouble Man. It's gonna be wild, I'm giving you warning. Gotta have room, keep an eye on him. I grew up with long and lean and hungry looks. Learned you can't go nowhere when you go by the book. People all around me earthbound, I learned how to fly. upside, downside, outside, sailing on by. Out of my reach, out of my hand, out of control, trouble man. Yeah. Been as far in all directions as you can get. I ain't never had enough of anything yet. I had women that tore me apart without any reason. I say, baby, I don't get mad, I just get even. I don't explain if you don't understand. I'm my own man, trouble man, trouble man. Thank you. I've held it all in will. God knows I've tried, but it's an awful awakening in a country boy's life to look in the mirror in total surprise at the hair on my shoulders and the age in my eye. Amanda, light of my life, fate should have made you a gentleman's wife. Amanda, light of my life, fate should have made you a gentleman's wife. It's a measure of people who don't understand the pleasures of life in a hillbilly band. I got my first guitar when I was 14. Well, I'm finally past 40, still wearing jeans. Amanda, light of my life, fate should have made you a gentleman's wife. Amanda, light of my life, fate should have made you a gentleman's wife. Here's a song me and John did when we were just children. It ain't a-raining back home. I bet your sister's still on the phone. I bet mama's in the kitchen cooking fried chicken, wishing that I hadn't done wrong. Thank you, John.
Oh, but don't you worry about us now, no, Mama. We'll be all right. They're taking good care of us in here. Just the other day, the warden came at me and he said, I hear you got a turkey for Christmas. And I said, I ain't never touched a turkey in my life. Have you? I said, what happened to it? He said, a guard got it. I went to that guard and I said, you get my turkey? And he said, yeah, I got your turkey, so what? And I said, you got your turkey, didn't you? There ain't no good in an evil-hearted woman, and I ain't cut out to be no Jesse James. And you don't go writing hot checks down in Mississippi, and there ain't no good chain gang.
Papa's reading yesterday's mail, wishing that the hay was all bare. I bet he's a wishing Mama'd stay in the kitchen. Here I am a-laying in jail.
Don't you worry about us now, no, Papa. We'll do all right. I was hanging around the fence the other day, and this guard come up to me and he said, what are you hanging around here for? And I said, for whatever's going around, I'll have some. He said, you're a smart aleck, ain't you? And I said, no, sir, I just didn't have any breakfast. I just get that way sometime during the middle of the day. There ain't no good in an evil-hearted woman, and I ain't cut out to be no Frank James. And you don't go writing hot checks down in Mississippi, and there ain't no good chain gang. There ain't no good in an evil-hearted woman, and I ain't cut out to be no Frank James. And you don't go writing hot checks down in Mississippi, and there ain't no good chain gang. And you don't go writing hot checks down in Mississippi, and there ain't no good chain gang. I fell into a burning ring of fire, went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring. Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire, went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire, went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet when hearts like ours meet. I fell for you like a child, oh, but the fire went wild. I fell into a burning ring of fire, went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm really glad we could bring this show to Nassau Coliseum. Glad to be with you folks tonight. This is a great tour. I love working with these guys. We haven't had a fight yet, and of course they've done everything I've told them to. No, it's been a great tour, and it's not over yet, thank God. We're really enjoying it. And thanks for coming out to the show. I usually introduce this song by saying, hello, I'm Johnny Cash, but you already knew that.
I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps a-rollin' on down to San Antone. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. I bet there's rich folks eating in a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep moving, and that's what tortures me. Well, if they freed me from this prison, if that railroad train was mine, and I'd move it on a little farther down the line, far from Folsom Prison, that's where I want to stay. And I'd let that lonesome whistle blow my blues away.
In the twilight glow, I see her. Blue eyes crying in the rain. And when we kissed goodbye and parted, I knew we'd never meet again. Love is like a dying ember, only memories remain. And through the ages I'll remember blue eyes crying in the rain. Up yonder, we'll stroll hand in hand again in a land that knows no party. Blue eyes cry in the rain. Thank you very much.
Well, I woke up Sunday morning, no way to hold my head that didn't hurt. And the beer I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert. Then I fumbled through my closet for my clothes, found my clean as dirty shirt. And I washed my face and combed my hair, stumbled down the stairs to meet the day.
I smoked my mind the night before with cigarettes and songs that I'd been picking. But I lit my first and watched a small boy cussing at a can that he'd been kicking. I crossed the empty streets, caught the Sunday smell of someone frying chicken. And it took me back to something that I lost somewhere, somehow along the way. On a Sunday morning sidewalk, I'm wishing, Lord, that I was strong. 'Cause there's something in a Sunday that makes a body feel alone. There ain't nothing short of dying, oh, half
of a sleeping city sidewalk. Sunday morning coming down. In the park I saw a daddy with a laughing little girl that he was swinging. And I stopped beside a Sunday school, listened to the songs that they was singing, bringing in the sheaves.
Then I headed back for home. Somewhere far away, a lonesome bell was ringing. And it echoed through the canyon like the disappearing dreams yesterday.
On a Sunday morning sidewalk, I'm wishing, Lord, that I was strong. 'Cause there's something about a Sunday that'll make your body feel alone. There ain't nothing short of dying half as lonesome as the sound of a sleeping city sidewalk. Sunday morning coming down.
Thank you. We'd like to introduce you to this all-star band behind us that Chip Moman put together for the tour and the album. They've been kicking tail all over the country here, starting with the man on a harmonica, Mickey Raphael. And on the slide guitar and dobro, Robbie Turner. Back there on the bass, Mike Leach. On the drums, Gene Chrisman. Rhythm guitar and vocals, J.R. Cobb. Reggie Young on lead guitar. And on the keyboards and the vocals, we have Bobby Woods, Bobby Emmons, and Danny Timms. Superstars. These guys are as good as you get. Take the ribbon from your hand, shake it loose, let it fall, laying soft against my skin, like the shadows on the wall. Come and lay down by my side till the early morning light. All I'm taking is your time. Help me make it through tonight. I don't care what's right or wrong. I don't try to understand. Let the devil take tomorrow. Lord, tonight I need a friend. Yesterday's dead and gone. bad to be alone. Help me make it through tonight. Yes, I do. I don't try to understand. Let the devil take tomorrow. Lord, tonight I need a friend. 'Cause yesterday's dead and gone. Tomorrow's out of sight, and it's bad to be alone. Help me make it through tonight. Help me make it through tonight. That helps. I was running through the summer rain and trying to catch that evening train and kill the old familiar pain weaving through my tangled brain. When I tipped my bottle back, I smacked into a cop I didn't see. Woo! That policeman said, "Mr. Cool, if you ain't drunk, then you're a fool." I said, "If that's against the law, tell me why I never saw a man locked in that jail of yours who wasn't neither black or poor as me." Well, that was when someone turned out the lights. I wound up in jail to spend the night and dream of all the wine and lonely girls in this best of all possible world. Well, I woke up next morning feeling like my head was gone and like my thick old tongue was licking something sick and wrong. I told that man I'd sell my soul for something wet and cold as that old cell. That kindly jailer grinned at me, all eaten up with sympathy, and poured himself another beer. Came and whispered in my ear, "Booze is just a dime a bottle, boy, you couldn't even buy the smell." I said I knew there was something I liked about this town. It takes more than that to bring me down. There's still a lot of wine and lonely girls in this best of all possible world. Of course, that was a long time ago, don't you know? We don't get in trouble like that anymore. Well, he does. Finally came and told me they were gonna set me free, that I'd be leaving town if I knew what was good for me. I said it's nice to learn that everybody's so concerned about my health. I said I won't be leaving no more quicker than I can, 'cause I've enjoyed about as much of this as I can stand. I don't need this town of yours more than I never needed nothing else. 'Cause there's still a lot of drinks that I ain't drunk and I ain't going to. Lots of pretty thoughts that I ain't done. And Lord, there's still so many lonely girls in this best of all possible world.
Chris, I want to do another one of your songs to help me out on it, will you? I have seen the morning burning gold out on the mountain in the sky. Aching with the feeling and the freedom of an eagle when she flies. Turning all my world away. She smiled upon my soul as I lay down, healing as the colors in the sunshine and the shadows of her eyes.
Waking in the morning to the feeling of her fingers on my skin. Wiping out the traces of the people and the places that I've been. Teaching me that yesterday was something that I never thought of trying. Talking of tomorrow and the money, love, and time we had to spend. Loving her was easier than anything I'll ever do again.
Coming close together with a feeling that I've never known before in my time. You're not ashamed to be a woman. She's not afraid to be a friend. I don't know the answer to the easy way she's opened every door in my mind. And dreaming is as easy as believing that it's never gonna end. Loving her was easier than anything I'll ever do again. Close together the feeling that I've never known before in my time. She's not ashamed to be a woman. She's not afraid to be a friend. I don't know the answer to the easy way. She's opened every door in my mind. And dreaming is as easy as believing that it's never gonna end. But loving her was easier than anything I'll ever do again. Loving her was easier than anything I'll ever do again. Thank you all very much. Riding on the city of New Orleans, Illinois Central, Monday morning rail. 15 cars and 15 restless riders, 3 conductors and 25 sacks of mail. All along southbound Odyssey, the train pulls out from Kankakee and rolls along past houses, farms, and fields, and passing trains that have no names, and freight yards filled with old black men, and the graveyards of the rusty automobile. Good morning, America, how are you? Say, don't you know me? I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the city of New Orleans, and I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. Leaving cards with the old man in the club car. Penny point, there ain't no one keeping score. And pass the paper bag that holds the bottle. Feel the wheels rumbling neath the floor. And the sons of Pullman porters and the sons of engineers ride their father's magic carpet made of steel. And mothers with your babes asleep, rocking to the gentle beat, and the rhythm of the rails is all they feel. Good morning, America, how are you? Say, don't you know me? I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the city of New Orleans, and I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. Changing cars in Memphis, Tennessee. Halfway home, we'll be there by morning. Through the Mississippi darkness, rolling down to the sea. But the towns and the people seem to just fade into a bad dream. And the steel rail still ain't heard the news. Conductor, sing your songs again, and passengers will please refrain. This train has got to disappear in railroad blues. Good morning, America. Don't you know me? I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the city of New Orleans. And I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. And I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. And I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. Thank you very much. Maybe I didn't love you quite as often as I could have. Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have. If I made you feel second best, girl, I'm sorry I was blind. But you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. Tell me that your sweet love hasn't died. And give me one more chance to keep you satisfied. I'll keep you satisfied. Little things I should have said and done, I just never took the time. But you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind.
Busted flat in Baton Rouge, heading for a train, feeling nearly faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed the diesel down, just
cold rain took us all away to New Orleans. I pulled my harpoon out of my dirty red bandana. I was blowing sad while Bobby sang the blues. With them windshield wipers slapping time and Bobby clapping hands, we finally sang up every song that driver knew. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing ain't worth nothing but it's free. Feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues. Feeling good was good enough for me. Good enough for me and Bobby McGee. From the coal mines of Kentucky to the California sun, Bobby shared the secrets of my soul. Standing right beside me, Lord, through everything I'd done. Every night she'd keep me from the cold.
And then one day near Salinas, Lord, I let her slip away, searching for the home I hope she'll find. And I trade all my tomorrows for one single yesterday, holding Bobby's body close to mine.
Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing ain't worth nothing but it's free. Feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues. Feeling good, buddy, that was good enough for me and Waylon and Johnny and Willie. Good enough for me and Bobby McGee. Yeah, Willie, yeah. That was good enough for me. Good enough for me and Bobby McGee. Right back at you.
Yeah, here's our new single record from Highwayman 2 album, Silver Stallion.
I'm gonna steal me a silver stallion with not a mark upon his silky hide. Teach him he can trust me like a brother. One day we'll saddle up and ride, and we're gonna ride gonna find me a reckless woman, razor blades and dice in her eye, just a touch of sadness in her finger, thunder and lightning in her thigh. And we're gonna ride, we're gonna ride,
Riding like a one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind. We're gonna ride.
I'm gonna chase the sky forever with a woman and the stallion and the wind. And the sun is gonna burn into a cinder before we ever pass this way again.
And we're gonna ride, we're gonna ride, riding like a one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind. We're gonna ride. Cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost.
he rides a feedlot, clerks in a market, on weekends selling tobacco and beer. He dreams tonight surrounded by fences, but he'll dream tonight of when fences weren't here. He blazed the trail with Lewis and Clark, and eyeball to eyeball, old Wyatt back down. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Travis in Texas, and rode with the 7th when Custer went down.
This is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's law.
And Remington showed us how he looked on canvas, and Louis L'Amour has told us his tale. And me and Johnny and Waylon and Chris sing about him, and wish to God we could have written his trail.
The old Chisholm Trail is covered with concrete now, and they truck them to market in 50-foot rigs. They roll by his marker and don't even notice, like living and dying was all he ever did.
Another piece of America's law. This is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's law. This is
darkness. Don't hide in the night. Come out in the sunshine. It will be alright. Life's too long to worry, and it's too short to cry. It's too deep to measure, and it's 2 stories wide. There's your side and my side. Which side do you need? Both sides make you lonely, and they'll make your heart bleed. Life's too long to worry, and it's too short to cry, and it's too deep to measure, and it's 2 stories wide. Life's too long to worry, and it's too short to cry, and it's too deep to measure, and it's 2 stories wide. Life's too long to worry, and it's too short to cry, and it's too deep to measure, and it's 2 stories wide.
All right, here's a song that could have been sung by an old soldier who rode with Zapata or Che Guevara or Jesus Christ, one of them revolutionaries.
Were we bitter then, with our backs against the wall? Were we better men than we'd ever been before? Say, if she came again today, would you still answer when she called? Tell the truth, my friend, don't it matter anymore?
We were simple men by her side when she was born. I'm talking about the dream. It was simple then, like the freedom when you fall. And we were smaller than you see, but soon we gathered like a storm. They don't understand what that thunder meant at all. Was he crucified? Was he done in by the law? Are you satisfied? He'll never ride again. Some people people say he got away. They say he never died at all. If that story's true, don't it bother you, my friend?
Was it bitter then, with our backs against the wall?
Say 2,000 years ago.
Were we better men than we've ever been before?
Or 200 years ago.
And if she came again today, would you still answer to her call?
Or tomorrow.
Tell the truth, my friend, don't it matter anymore?
See him wasted on the sidewalk in his jacket and his jeans, wearing yesterday's misfortunes like a smile. Once he had a future full of money, love, and dreams, which he spent like they was going out of style.
But he keeps right on a-changing, for the better or the worse, searching for a shrine he'd never found, never knowing if believing is a blessing or a curse, and if the going up is worth the coming down.
He's a poet, he's a picker, he's a prophet, he's a pusher, he's a pilgrim and a preacher, and a problem when he's stoned. He's a walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction, taking every wrong direction on his lonely way back home. It's tasted good and evil in your bedrooms and your bars, traded in tomorrow for today, running from his devil's load and reaching for the stars, losing all he loves along the way.
But if the world keeps right on turning for the better or the worse, and all he ever gets is older and around, from the rocking of the cradle till the rolling of the hearse, the going up was worth the coming down.
He's a poet, he's a liar, he's a prophet, he's a dreamer, he's a pilgrim and a preacher, and a problem when he's stoned. He's a walking contradiction, partly truth and mostly fiction, taking every wrong direction on his lonely way back home.
Thank you. Here's a song for the heroes of the spirit.
Was a man named Mahatma Gandhi, would not bow down, he would not fight, knew the deal was down and dirty, nothing wrong could make it right away. But he knew his duty and the price he had to pay. just another holy man who tried to make a stand. My God, they killed him. Another man from Atlanta, Georgia, name of Martin Luther King, shook the land like rolling thunder, made the bells of freedom ring today, with a dream of beauty that they could not burn away. Just another holy man who dared to be a friend. My God, they killed him. Son of God Almighty, the Holy One called Jesus Christ, healed the lame and fed the hungry. For his love they took his life away. On the road to glory, where the story never ends, just the Holy Son of Man will never understand. My God, they killed him. Sing about Mahatma Gandhi, sing of Martin Luther King, sing of Jesus Christ Almighty and the brothers Kennedy.
At my door the leaves are falling, a cold wild wind will come. Sweethearts walk by together, and I still miss someone.
And I go out on a party and look for a little fun, but I find a darkened corner, 'cause I still miss someone.
Though I never got over those blue eyes, I see them everywhere. I miss those arms that held me when all the love was there.
And I wonder if she's sorry for leaving what we'd begun. There's
Someone for me somewhere, and I still miss someone. Never got over meet them everywhere. I miss those arms that held me when all the love was there.
And I wonder if she's sorry for leaving what we'd begun.
There's someone for me somewhere, and I still miss someone.
Hey, you know, this tour, as I told you, has a few days to go. Then I have to leave these guys, and I take our show, June Carter and myself and John Carter and the band overseas. June Carter, who wrote Ring of Fire, my wife is here tonight. Stand up and take a bow, will you, June? Where are you, baby? Hey, here she is, back over here. All right. Anyway, we're going to, after this tour, we go to Europe, and our tour ends in Bucharest, Romania, and looking forward to going there. But of all the places we've ever been overseas, it don't matter where, you know, when we come back to this country, we love it a whole lot more than when we left and went somewhere else. I thank God for all the freedoms we've got in this country. I cherish them and treasure them. Even the rights to burn the flag, you know. I'm proud of those rights. But I tell you what, we've also got, let me tell you something. Shh. We've also got a right to bear arms, and if you burn my flag, I'll shoot you. But I'll shoot you with a lot of love like a good American. After such a trip overseas in 1975, I wrote this. I walked through a county courthouse square, and on a park bench, an old man was sitting there. I said, "Your old courthouse is kind of run down." He said, "No, it'll do for our little town." I said, "Your old flagpole's kind of leaned a little bit, and that's a ragged old flag you got hanging on it." He said, "Have a seat," and I sat down. "Is this the first time you've come to our little town?" I said, "I think it is." He said, "I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag." You see, we got a little hole in that flag there when Washington took it across the Delaware. And it got powder burned the night Francis Scott Key sat up watching it right and say, "Can you see?" Got a little rip in New Orleans with Pakenham and Jackson tugging at its seams. It almost fell at the Alamo beside the Texas flag, but she waved on though. It got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville. Got cut again at Shiloh Hill. There was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard, and Bragg, and the south wind blew hard on that ragged old flag. On Flanders Field in World War I, she took a bad hit from a Bertha gun. She turned blood red in World War II. She hung limp and low by the time that one was through. She was in Korea, Vietnam. She went where she was sent by her Uncle Sam. The Native American Indians, the blacks, the yellow, the white, all shed red blood for the Stars and Stripes. And in her own good land here, she's been abused. She's been burned, dishonored, denied, refused. And the very government for which she stands is scandalized throughout the land. And she's getting threadbare and she's wearing kind of thin, but she's in good shape for the shape she's in. Because she's been through the fire before, and she can take a whole lot more. So we raise her up every morning and we bring her down slowly every night. We don't let her touch the ground and we fold her upright. On second thought, I guess I do like to brag, 'cause I'm mighty proud of that ragged old flag.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
An old cowpoke went riding out one dark and windy day. Along a ridge he rested as he went along his way. When all at once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw, flying through the ragged brush and up the cloudy draw.
Their brands were still on fire and their hooves were made of steel. Their horns were black and shiny and their hot breath he could feel. A bolt of fear went through him as they thundered through the skies, for he saw the riders coming hard and he heard their mournful cry. Yippee-yi-yay, yippee-yi-yay, oh yippee-yi-oh, yippee-yi-oh. Ghost riders in the sky.
Reggie Young.
Their faces gaunt, their eyes were blurred, their shirts all soaked with sweat. They're riding hard to catch that herd, but they ain't caught 'em yet. 'Cause they'll have to ride forever on that range up in the sky, on horses snorting fire. As they ride on, hear them cry.
As the riders loped on by him, he heard one call his name. If you want to save your soul from hell riding on our range, then cowboy, change your ways today, or with us you will ride, trying to catch the devil's herd
Across these endless skies. Yippee-yi-yay, riders in the sky.
Ghost riders in the sky.
Ghost riders in the sky.
And guitar. Where do we take it from here? Rhinestone suits and new shiny cars. It's been the same way for years. Somebody told me when I first got to Nashville, oh, you finally got it made. Old Hank made it here. Now we're all sure that you will, but I don't think Hank done it this way. Did old Hank really do it this way? Play it. 10 years on the road, making one-night stand, speeding my young life away. So tell me why 'cause I'll understand. Oh, you sure Hank done it this way. Did old Hank really do it this way? Take it on.
Here's a little blues number I wrote a little while back. I'm going to get Robbie to start it off on the steel guitar over there called Nightlife. When the evening sun goes down, gonna find me hanging around. The nightlife ain't no good life, but it's my life. Many people just like me, dreaming of old used to be. And the nightlife ain't no good life, but it's my life. Well, now listen to the blues that they're playing. Listen to what the blues are saying. Let me hear you play some blues on the steel guitar, Robert. Mine is just another scene from the world of broken dreams. And the nightlife ain't no good life, but it's my life. To the blues that they're playing. Listen to what the blues are saying. just another scene from the world of broken dreams. And the nightlife ain't no good life, but it's my life. And the nightlife ain't no good life, but it's my life. Thank you all very much.
This song we're all gonna do for you now. This may be the best song you ever heard in your whole life. Then again, it may not be. Last night I broke the seal on a Jim Beam decanter that looked like Elvis. Soaked the label off a Flintstone jelly jar. Pick me up a place at the little table that you left us. Pull me up a big old hunk of floor. Pull the head off Elvis, fill Fred up to his pelvis. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, and so are you. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, and so are you.
Along about 10, we all got to talking about Graceland, bedrock and such.
The conversation finally turned to women, but they said they didn't get around too much. Elvis said find them young, Fred said old-fashioned women are fun. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, and so are you. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, and so are you. Well, I broke Presley's nose,
Pouring the last drop from his toes.
Fred was rolling on the floor. Then I led us three in perfect harmony. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, so are you. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, so are you. One more. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, so are you. Two more. Yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, and so are you. I told you.
I'd play the Red River Valley. He'd sit out in the kitchen and cry, run his fingers through 70 years of living, Wonder, Lord, is every well I drill gone dry? We were friends, me and this old man, like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train. Is a drifter and a driller of oil wells. Old school man of the world. He let me drive his car when he's too drunk to. Wink, give me money for the girl. And our lives were like some old western movie, like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train.
From the day that I could walk, he'd take me with him to a place called the Green Frog Cafe. There was old men with beer guts and dominoes, lying about their lives while they played. I was just a kid, they called me sidekick.
Like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train.
One day I looked up and he's pushing 80, and there's brown tobacco stains all down his chin. To me he's been one of the heroes of this country. So why is he all dressed up like them old men, drinking beer and playing Moon and 42?
Like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train.
The day before he died, I went to see him. I was grown, and he was almost gone.
We just closed our eyes and dreamed us up a kitchen. Sang another verse of that old song. Come on, John, that son of a gun's coming.
Like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train. Like desperados waiting for a train.
Oh, well, I taught the weeping willow how to cry, cry, cry.
And I showed the clouds how to cover up a clear blue sky.
And the tears I cried for that woman are gonna flood you, big river.
And I'm gonna sit right here until I die.
Well, I met her accidentally in St. Paul, Minnesota, and it tore me up to hear her when she drawled that southern drawl. Well, I heard my dream went back downstream, Cohorton and Davenport, but I follow you, big river, when you call.
took me to St. Louis later on down the river. Freighter said she's been here, but she's gone, boy, she's gone. Then I found her trail in Memphis, but she just walked up the bluff, raised a few eyebrows, moved on down alone. Well, I pulled into Natchez next day down the river, but there wasn't too much to make around to stay very long. Well, I left, it was raining, so nobody saw me cry. Big River, why is you doing me this way?
Now won't you bat it down by Baton Rouge, River Queen, roll it on. Take that woman on down to New Orleans, New Orleans. Go on, I've had enough, done my blues down in the Gulf. She loves you, Big River, more than me.
Oh, well, I taught the weeping willow how to cry, cry, cry.
And I showed the clouds how to cover up the clear blue sky. And the tears I cried for that woman are gonna flood you, Big River.
And I'm gonna sit right here until I die.
Thank you.
Well, my daddy left home when I was 3. Didn't leave very much for my ma and me, except this old guitar and an empty bottle of booze. Now, I don't blame him cause he run and hid, but the meanest thing that my daddy ever did was before he left, he went and named me Sue. He must have thought it was quite a joke, and it got a lot of laughs from lots of folks. Seems I had to fight my whole life through. Some gal would giggle and I'd turn red, and some guy'd laugh and I'd bust his head. But I'll tell you, life ain't easy for a boy named Sue. But I grew up quick and I grew up mean. My fists got hard, my wits got keen. Roamed from town to town to hide my shame. But I made me a vow to the moon and stars, I'd search the honky-tonks and bars, kill that man that give me that awful name. Well, it was Gatlinburg in mid-July, and I just hit town and my throat was dry. Thought I'd stop and have myself a brew at an old saloon on a street of mud. There at a table dealing stud sat the dirty mangy dog that named me Sue. Well, I knew that snake was my own sweet dad from a worn out picture that my mother had. Knew that scar on his cheek and his evil eye. He was big and bent and gray and old, and I looked at him and my blood ran cold, and I said, "My name is Sue. How do you do? How you gonna die? Well, I hit him hard right between the eyes, and he went down, but to my surprise, come up with a knife and cut off a piece of my ear. Then I busted a chair right across his teeth, and we crashed through the walls and into the street, kicking and gouging in the mud and the blood and the beer. Well, I'll tell you, I fought tougher men, but I really can't remember when. He kicked like a mule and he bit like a crocodile. I heard him laugh and then I heard him cuss, and he reached for his gun, but I pulled mine first, and he stood there looking at me, and I saw him smile. And he said, son, this world is rough, and if a man's gonna make it, he's gotta be tough. And I knew I wouldn't be there to help you along. So I give you that name and I said goodbye, and I knew you'd have to get tough or die. It's that name that'll help to make you strong. He said, now you just fought one hell of a fight, and I know you hate me and you got the right to kill me now, and I wouldn't blame you if you do. But you ought to thank me before I die for the gravel in your gut and the spit in your eye, 'cause I'm the that named you Sue. What could I do? I got all choked up and I threw down my gun. I called him a paw and he called me a son. Come away with a different point of view. And I think about it now and then, every time I try and every time I win. If I ever have another boy, I'm gonna name him Waylon, or Willie, or Chris, or after you, Sue. I still hate that name, Sue. Yeah.
God bless you. This one goes out especially for the Vietnam vets. Why me, Lord? What have I ever done to deserve even one of the pleasures I've known? Tell me, Lord, what did I ever do that was worth loving you, or the kindness you've shown? Lord, help me, Jesus, I've wasted so. Help me, Jesus, I know what I am, but now that I know that I needed you, so help me, Jesus, my soul's in your hand. Try me, Lord, if you think there's a way I can try to repay all I've taken from you. Maybe, Lord, I can show someone else what I've been through myself on my way back to you. Lord, help me, My soul's in your hand. Jesus, my soul's in your hand.
Right back at you. God bless you. Well, the only three things in life that make it worth living: guitars are tuned good and firm, feeling women. I don't need my name in the marquee light. I got my song and I got you with me tonight. Maybe it's time we got down to some basics in love. Let's go to Lukenbach, Texas, with Waylon and Willie and the boy. This successful life we're living's got us feeling like the Hatfields and McCoy. Between Hank Williams' pain songs, Newberry's train song, Blue Eyes crying in the rain. Out of Lukenbach, Texas, ain't nobody feeling no pain. Baby, let's sell your diamond rings, buy some boots and faded jeans and go away. Your coat and tie are killing me, and in your high society you cry all day. We've been so busy keeping up with the Jones, full-car garage, and we're still building on. Maybe it's time we got down to some basics in love. So on. Let's go to Lukenbach, Texas, with Waylon and Willie and the boy. This successful life we're living's got us feeling like the Hatfields and McCoy. Between Hank Williams' pain songs, Newberry's train song, Blue Eyes crying in the rain. Out of Lukenbach, Texas, ain't nobody feeling no pain.
On the road again, I just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again, going places that I've never been, seeing things that I may never see again, and I can't wait to get on the road again. the road again. Like a band of gypsies, we go down the highway. We're the best of friends, insisting that the world keep turning our way. And our way is on the road again. I just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again. The best of friends, insisting that the world keep turning our way, and our way is on the road again. I just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again. I can't wait to get on the road again.
Keep the faith.
When I was putting together my show, putting together songs that I wanted to do every night for the rest of my life, I started putting together my favorite songs. A lot of those songs are Kris Kristofferson songs. I do them in my show every night. I do Loving You Is Easier Than Anything I've Ever Done Before. I do Me and Bobby McGee. And I do Help Me Make It Through the Night. I do these three songs every night, I guess because these are three of my favorite Kris Kristofferson songs. Well, when I first heard Bobby McGee, I said, well, why didn't I write that? I think the first time I heard it, Roger Miller sang it, and I thought he had written it. But then I found out later it was Kris Kristofferson. But it has all the ingredients of the things that I like to see and hear in a song. It's from all about freedom and traveling, and even down to the red bandana. So naturally, I related to that song a lot. I guess one of the reasons Chris and I didn't meet for so long was because we are a lot alike. And I had been to Nashville and was living in Ridgetop and really had no desire to go there. And he was living in Nashville and really had no desire to come to Ridgetop. So it was amazing that we ever met. Jimmy Day brought him to see me one night, and I'm really glad he did. That's Chris that you hear singing in the background there, Chris Christopherson singing Desperados Waiting for a Train. That song is one of the songs we do on our show every night, and I think it pretty much explains not only Chris's personality, but most of us around. We feel like we belong to that group of old guys who sit around and talk about war stories. And Chris must have lived 1,000 other times in 1,000 other places because he seems to be able to describe all these stories so vividly that it makes him one of the greatest writers of our time. Well, Chris and I communicate probably differently than a lot of other people, and we have our own greetings that we use that I think pretty well explains the type of personality that Chris really is, and I'd be glad to demonstrate that greeting if you wanted me to.
Interview Waylon Jennings.
Mark,
Come marker.
please, Will, go ahead.
Well, the best way I know to describe Willie Nelson is, a lot of people call him laid back, but we always call that lazy when we was growing up back home in Texas. He's all Texan through and through, you know. When I first became aware of Willie, we both signed with RCA Records about the same time, back in the 60s. And they had a thing called the RCA Breakfast, where we were to entertain some of the disc jockeys and what have you who were in town at a breakfast. Free entertainment, you know. Anyway, but they said, think what it'll do for your career. We did that for 10 years, you know, every year. Finally helped our career a little bit, I think. But anyway, I always thought Willie he wrote a song called I Just Can't Let You Say Goodbye, and one of the lines is this, the skin around your throat is pale, indented by my fingernails. And I always thought he kind of reminded me of the Peter Lorre of country music when I first met him. I guess I first met Willie in about 1961, 2, 3, somewhere along there. And and we were friends, you know. And but the thing about him, it's kind of like there are three artists that I've found are this way. It was Willie Nelson, Elvis Presley, and Jerry Lee Lewis, in this way in their music. The first time you ever heard them, they were just as good as the last time you heard them. I don't know. They just seemed like they just were there, and those are the only ones that are like that, you know. He's just Willie. He's Willie if he's on the bus or if he's on the stage. And the personality's the same. And, of course, he's great. That goes without saying. The other night, he was singing, and Willie does something called back phrasing. And I've always said it was not back phrasing. I've always thought he just didn't have any rhythm. And last night, we were on stage, and Willie did a real way back phrase where it sounds like he ain't gonna make it, you know. And Johnny Cash looked at me and said, how does he do that? And I said, he can't help it. You know, we picked more or less the songs that we felt comfortable with and thought would fit with the show. And I think Willie picked, you know, the right ones, you know. City of New Orleans knocks them out, and then You're Always on My Mind. The other night I saw something, you know, like everybody was jumping and yelling, and I saw this old couple who were right down in front, and when Willie was singing You're Always on My Mind, they were holding hands like teenagers. And so I think that meant something. Well, you know, when you grow up in Texas, you're taught that you're a little bit bigger and a little bit better and a little bit tougher and a little bit smarter than anybody else. And Willie and I were both taught that. Now, I don't know about Willie, but it was rough on me when I got out in the world and found out I wasn't, you know. But the thing, you know, country music and Texas are just one and the same, you know. When we were growing up, it was like right out of the war, right out of the Depression, and we didn't have any money, and, you know, Saturday we'd go to a movie, but the big thing is like every other house had a guitar or a fiddle and somebody that knew how to play it. And something that I really miss too is like we used to get together and have those, we call them guitar pull-ins now, you know, when we get together. And we do that every once in a while, but not like we did. But that was our big entertainment. That was a way of life. Country music was Texas. Texas is country music. Well, yeah, here's the way Willie is. Yeah. Willie don't get excited, you know. They call him Fast Eddie, and I'll never know why, except one thing. When you're going through a crowd and signing autographs and trying to get back to a dressing room or something, Willie always gets there first, and I don't know how. And I think that's what Fast Eddie's about. But a story about Willie, which this is a little bit about Texas, too. This just shows you the way they really are down there. Well, Willie picked me and Jesse up at the airport in his car, and we took out toward his farm out around Dripping Springs, and we got out about 10 miles from town and ran out of gas. So, no problem. Me and him both were really hotter than fire in Texas, you know. Everybody knew Willie and everybody knew Waylon. So we got out and we sauntered around a little bit. We wasn't going to be there long, and we knew it. About 30 minutes later, there had been about 20 cars go by and just waving at us. And when I knew we was in trouble is all of Willie's shows were sponsored by Lone Star at that time. And this Lone Star beer truck went by, and we hollered, "Wait, stop." He says, waved at us, "Willie, Wendland." We said, "Stop, we're out of gas." And he said, "No." So I figured it out. They might like to hear you sing in Texas, but they sure don't want to ride with you. Well, I think I hear something that nobody else hears, maybe, unless they've known him as long as I have, you know. I've seen him struggle, and I've seen him go through a lot of heartache and survival. You know, he's a survivor. And at one time, I even thought Willie was never going to make it, you know. And I don't know, he was hanging out with losers, me, for one of them. So what could I say to him, you know? But I hear a lot of things in Willie's voice, and he's a good man. He's a good person. But it's really easy to sing like Willie. All you got to do, it's all in the finger. You know, that's Brer Rabbit's hiding place. And you go, hey, I like this. You say, "There's a good-hearted woman in love with a good..." It's all easy. You got to think short, though. The thing about his music, and the thing about him, is honesty. He has a... And he really is an honest person, as long as you're the last one who talked to him.
Well, Johnny Cash is probably more responsible for my being right here, right now, than any human being on the planet. He was a hero when I was in the Army, and before that, you know. But when I was first getting into music, all the GIs were singing Johnny Cash songs, and all the stories they had about John when he toured through Germany, where I was, were real important things in my mind. And he also had brought a whole credibility to country music that nobody at the time had, through his association with Bob Dylan and their mutual respect. And he's always been larger than life for me. He's been this dark, driven force, you know, that was probably the most exciting performer that I'd seen in my life at that time. I met him backstage at the Opry when I was still in the Army, when I went to Nashville on leave, and I saw this guy walk in. He looked like a panther, and he was messed up, as he often was in those days, and he was skinny as a snake, but he had electricity about him that was just, it may be the reason I decided to quit the Army and go back to Nashville. And I went back there, and the first job I got was, I was a janitor in a recording studio where John recorded. And nobody could go to his sessions in those days. They had policemen outside, and I guess I was the only songwriter in Nashville who could be there. And I almost got fired one time because a couple of songwriters crashed the session, and they were trying to pitch him a gospel album, and for some reason the woman who was the secretary to the producer blamed me for letting him in there, and tried to get me fired. And so the next night my boss came down and said, I don't think you should go to John's session tonight, and which was heartbreaking for me because I lived for those recording sessions. But I understood, and I hid down in the vault of the recording studio and was erasing tapes down there, doing some kind of busy work, and John appeared down there in the basement. I remember his hand was bleeding where he'd bounced into the wall or something, and he said, I understand you're not coming to the session. I said, no, I got a lot of work to do down here. I can't. He said, well, I just wanted to tell you I'm not going to record until you come up there. So I had to go up and sit on the floor. And here I was the janitor, right? And I'm sitting on the floor, and this woman who tried to get me fired was watching me the whole session. It was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life. But I thought it was a measure of the man. He also recorded the first big song for me, Sunday Morning Coming Down. Won the Song of the Year for me in 1970, I think it was. And he put me on stage the first time I was ever on stage. He put me on in the 1969 Newport Folk Festival. They didn't want me on, and there wasn't time for me, and he insisted that I go out and do 2 songs. I wasn't even scheduled to play on a thing, and I sang Bobby McGee and Sunday Morning Coming Down with his band backing me up, and it started the whole ball rolling. I never had to work a lick since. Well, for the first about a couple of years that I was aware of John or knew him at all, he was probably the most elusive creature on the planet. I didn't know June could say anything other than "Where's John?" I never heard her say anything but "Where's John?" for about 2 years there, because he was missing all the time, and he was either running from or after something. I don't know what it was. But the thing that always impressed me about him was that he always took up for the underdog, and starting with songs like the Ballad of Ira Hayes, where he's identified with the Indian. For a while, he tried to tell people he was an Indian. He said he got to believe in it himself for a while, but he's not. But he's always stood up for the underdog, and that's something I've tried to live up to. He's been a good example for me there. I don't know. John just adds majesty to anything. He represents integrity. He looks as much like anybody, like a historical figure to me. Like he could be up there with Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. He's a very heavy authority figure. He came on the stage one time with me. I was playing with my band at a little club in New York, the Bottom Line, and my band's seen everybody. They've seen all the rock and rollers, and he walked out there, and everybody in my crew and my band was stunned. We sang Masters of War, some Dylan song, and it just blew them away. He carries an authority that He's still larger than life to me. Even when I'm standing up there with him next to him on the stage, you know. They all are, in a way. But John has got a little distance from me, you know. Willie and I are more the same breed, I think. But John's, maybe he is the father of our country. I don't know. I insisted on Big River, both in the album and on the show, because I think it's probably one of the best written songs of all time. It was, especially considering when it was written back in the 50s, you know, most of the songs that were written back there you could forget about today. But this was written in the tradition of Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan. I mean, just from the opening line in there, I met her accidentally in St. Paul, Minnesota. It tore me up every time I heard her drawl, southern drawl. Then I heard my dream move back downstream, cavorting in Davenport. And I followed you, Big River, when you called. That's a great verse. And then it says, you took me to St. Louis later on down the river. The freighter said she'd been here, but she's gone. Boy, she's gone. Then I found her trail in Memphis, and she just walked up a bluff, raised a few eyebrows, and moved on down alone. That's poetry, you know. It's as good as it gets. And it's also got a driving rhythm that you can't sit still on. He's written and performed some things that have stirred a lot of our blood, you know.
Thanks, Chris. That's great.
Waylon is one of the real legends in our business, and I don't use the word loosely, legend. He's got everything about him in his makeup, in his character, and his reputation that says legend. I see Waylon down the dusty roads of yesterday, a disc jockey in a little West Texas town, and then, you know, doing his apprenticeship in country music. I think it was there, I've heard Waylon talk about it, that he developed his real love for our kind of music, because he always loved it from the time he was a kid and learned to play the first chords on the guitar, but he really got into it when he was still in his teens on a disc jockey in West Texas. And then he was such a good natural musician. There was a time with Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper and Richie Valens there, and you've heard the story about one of them took Waylon's seat, that he was supposed to have been on that plane that crashed. And I met Waylon the first time in the early 60s at a club in Phoenix. June and I were working there, and this was before June and I were married. And we went out and watched him. And in the course of about an hour on stage, Waylon did Johnny Cash, he did Beatles, he did Elvis, Bob Dylan. And the man amazed me. He did all these different musical styles and all these different songs, but he did them his own way, you know. He didn't sound like any of the people whose songs he was singing. He did them his own way, and he sounded like Waylon. He was so unique. Well, you know, Nashville is the only music community that I really knew anything about, so June and I encouraged Waylon to come on and move to Nashville and start recording and get his career going. Because, you know, it wasn't half into the show till I knew that here was a man who had a whole lot more to offer to the world than 400 or 500 people that might come into a Phoenix nightclub. And he came in, but right up front, he bucked against the Nashville music community and the way things were cut and dried in Nashville, and the things that go on behind the scenes that have nothing to do with the business way of doing business in Nashville. He came in doing it his own way. And so naturally, when the outlaw movement came along, Waylon was one of the chief outlaws, so to speak. Well, he's very special as a songwriter, as an artist, because he is an American original. I always said that about Waylon. He's an American original, and he's a song stylist, and he's a great inspiration for a lot of new artists to strike out and do it their own way,
because Waylon did it his own way and he made it work. He's a great inspiration to young people, to young artists coming on the scene. Well, I always said Waylon was an American original. He struck out on doing it his own way, and he made it work against great odds in the Nashville music community. He did it in un-Nashville kind of a way. And he writes songs. He writes more songs about things that are happening now and feeling things like we might be aware of, like everybody was saying things like Hank Williams would turn over in his grave if he could see what's happening to country music today. So Waylon writes a song called "Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way?" You know, and then he wrote songs like Lukenbach, Texas. I think he and Chips Moman wrote that, and those are one of those songs that Waylon says he hates. So it's all right with me, Waylon. I hate it too. No, he's written some really great songs that are unusual and different. Waylon was he writes on a long yellow legal pad, you know, like a lot of us do. These long yellow pads, because you can get usually a whole song on one sheet of paper. And when Waylon and I had an apartment together back in the 60s, he had stacks of these pads just like I do, and he'd have pieces of songs. On every page, you'd have a song idea. Sometimes, if the idea was really good, he'd go ahead and finish it, but most of them were unfinished, and I'd say somewhere Waylon has tons of long yellow legal pads with just pieces of songs on it. We all do, though. But Waylon wrote some really original stuff. Yeah, Waylon and friendship. You know, you either are his friend or you are not his friend. And I thankfully am his friend. I had an engagement in Toronto, a 3-day engagement, and I called Waylon just before I was leaving to catch a plane. I said, my guitar player I just found out is ill, can't go. You know anybody I could take to Toronto to play guitar for me for 3 days? I'd called Reggie Young and a couple of other people I knew, and they couldn't go. And Waylon said, I'll find you somebody and call you back as soon as you get to Toronto. Well, I called Waylon back, or he called me when I got to Toronto, and I said, did you find me a guitar player? And he said, yeah. And I said, who is it? And he said, me. I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you know, I knew he could do it. He's capable. He could play Luther Perkins or anybody's style on the guitar. And he had played for me sometimes. We were just fooling around, you know. I said, Waylon, I can't do that. I said, I can't, Waylon Jennings playing guitar for me, I can't do that. And he said, would you do it for me? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I'm doing it for you. I'll be there. He told me what time he'd be in. He came in, and I really felt strange, you know, having Waylon for a guitar player. And he insists that they not even have the lights on him. He was way over to my left, and I'd go on. I did 4 or 5 songs. He played Folsom Prison Blues without missing a lick, just like on the record, and all the other ones. And they wouldn't let him put a light on him. But those people, they kept going like this, you know, looking at him way off over there in the corner. And I asked Waylon, I said, can I tell him, please? So after about 6 songs, I said, my guitar player, ladies and gentlemen, is Waylon Jennings. And of course, the place went nuts. And then I turned the show over to him. I refused to sing anymore until he had done a few songs. And of course, they loved that. And then word got around. We had a pretty good crowd at first show, but every show after that was packed because it was a real event. Waylon Jennings has come to play guitar for Johnny Cash, but he's going to sing too. You know, it was really a big deal. And it's a thing that I'd never forget as a friend. There's nothing I wouldn't do for Waylon. When Waylon and I are doing Ain't No Good Chain Gang, we're brothers in prison somewhere down in Mississippi for that 3 minutes. And we understand each other very well. He called me from home. I was in Dusseldorf, Germany, and told me about that song. He said, I found the song we gotta record together. And he sang it to me over the phone. And I knew he was right. But that song is one of those things that feels as right for me as Folsom Prison Blues. And it's like I am doing it with my brother when I'm doing it with Waylon. You know, I heard Chris say, this show could go on without me. Anybody could take my place. That's not true. There's not a one of the 4 that could be replaced and the program proceed as usual. No way. There's no way. And especially Waylon. He's not only brings his songs and his vocal style, but his guitar sound, which is an integral part of the Highwayman sound that comes from the stage. It's Waylon's guitar that I call it noodling the way he plays. It sounds like he's playing with his knuckles sometimes, but it gives it that real, sound, and it gives it feeling and fullness. And the show could not happen without Waylon.
Johnny Cash had asked Chris and I and Waylon to join him in Switzerland for a Christmas show, a Christmas special that he was doing a few years back. During the time that we were over there, John and I decided what a great idea it would be to do an album together. And so we started picking songs to do, and Chris and Waylon were there, so we said, well, why don't we get these guys to do some songs with us? So the next thing you know, it's the four of us talking about doing some songs together. And on the first album, we also had Johnny Rodriguez who sang with us, and it was just one of those things that evolved from an idea of Johnny and I singing together to all of us getting together.
Working with those guys, I'm a fan of all three of them, Willie, Waylon, and Chris, and I like to listen to them sing. I like to watch them perform, and then when it comes to my time to jump in and perform something with them, that makes it all that much better. It's like playing with my idols. I've always loved Chris's writing, and always liked Willie's singing, and always felt good with Waylon. We've been close friends for 25 years. I've known Waylon longer than any of them, except I met Willie before I met Waylon, but I didn't know him. I didn't know Willie till the last few years. But it's really a kick to perform with them and to see one of them stop the show with one of their great songs, like if Willie sings Always on My Mind. I like to stand back and watch him soak up that applause, and I like to stand there and applaud for him.
Well, have you ever had 3 or 4 leaders of countries that didn't like one another? Nah, not any yet. Now, wait a minute. I'll tell you what it's like. It's like a trip into the past, and yet it's all up to date, because we do the songs a little different. The main thing and the best thing about the Highwayman tour is the music and the songs. My favorite in there is Help Me Make It Through the Night. The arrangement and everything that Chris does on that just knocks me out.
Oh, I don't think any of us have found out anything about any of us that we didn't know before. All of us have egos the size of a bus, and as long as we all know that going in, we can get along fine.
None of us are the leader. There are times when each one of the four of us have had a bigger moment of glory for the maybe for the night than any that the others have had, but that happens in this business. And we've all been around, even with our gigantic egos, that we try not to let get in our way. We've all been around enough to know that there's going to come a time when there's going to be more Waylon Jennings fans out there, or more Chris fans, or more Willie fans, and there will be Johnny Cash fans. And it works the other way around. We may play a place in Ohio where my fan club headquarters are, and the whole front section will be my fan club, But that's just for that night, and the other guys understand that, and that never bothers me. I love to see the guys tear the house down and stop the show.
The first few days on the road, everyone was a little tense and nervous because of the new things that we were doing, and we were trying to put together a brand new show for all of us, and we were all used to running our own shows, so it was time to settle down. It took a little while for all of us to get together on what we wanted to do and the way we wanted to do it, and but we did because we wanted to. We wanted to work it out. I think it's one of the best things that's really ever happened to me to be able to work with these guys, because these are not only friends of mine, these are heroes, and it's every day is just wonderful on this tour, even the bad things that we won't talk about.
We have a lot of fun, we really do. We have some things where we have to bow up and stop some things. The only problem this thing has ever had is the people outside. And it takes us about 5 minutes, the four of us talking, to get it all straightened out. But it can be a mess, and that's the only complaint I have. If people would quit doing what they think we want them to do and do what they're supposed to do, everything would be all right. But you know what? It settled in about 3 nights ago, and everything settled in and it's right now.
I don't know. Once you got it, you always got it. If you don't have it, you never will have it. I don't know. I've always loved to perform.
Whether you enjoy the road or not depends on what you're doing on the road. And all of us who really enjoy playing music really enjoy being on the road. I'm sure there's a lot of truck drivers who really enjoy what they do, and a lot of salesmen who do it for the simple fact that it is moving. Billy Joe Shaver said the closest thing to moving is the closest thing to being free. And I think a lot of us feel that way, especially those of us who've been out here on the highway for 40 years. And evidently we must love it, or we'd go home if we had one.
I don't even want to go home from this tour. I want to stay on the road. I love to perform the Highwayman tour. I love to work with these three guys.
You know what it's like on stage with all four of us? It's like a fantasy, you know? Here, like out on the road, I do 20 or 30 songs and they're all mine, They're songs that I've done hundreds of times and thousands of times, some of them. And you get, there's not many ways you can excite yourself doing the same songs over and over. Now here, I do 4 songs that I normally do on the road, maybe 5. And I get to sing with Willie on his songs, with John on his, and play guitar behind them. And it's kind of like a fantasy come true, because you always thought, man, if I ever played on that, I'd have done this, or I'd sing a harmony note like this. And so you get a chance to do it.
Thanks, that's great.
All right.